Hello and welcome. As a hotel AI expert with extensive experience in modern hospitality operations, I am absolutely delighted to welcome all students of Europe Hotel School to your online learning journey. In the fast-paced world we work in, it's easy for things to slip through the cracks, but sometimes those cracks can hide some pretty serious risks. So today, we're going to dive deep into how to spot the warning signs of fraud in a hotel setting and, more importantly, how to use modern tools to protect your organization. This is a skill that's, well, absolutely crucial for your future. So, how are we going to tackle this? We've broken it down into 5 key parts. First up, we'll look at the hidden risks that are unique to our industry. Then, we'll get into decoding red flags, those little early warnings. After that, we'll explore the incredible power of data, talk about the balanced approach every manager needs to master, and finally, we'll pull it all together into a framework to keep your organization safe. Let's get started. The hospitality industry is just buzzing with energy, right? But think about it. We have huge numbers of transactions every single day, departments that often work in their own silos, and constant interaction with guests. All of that creates this perfect storm, an environment where financial and operational risks can, unfortunately, hide in plain sight. Now, here's the key thing to remember. These kinds of problems almost never just pop up out of the blue. Nope, they're almost always hinted at by little warning signs beforehand. For you, as the next generation of leaders in this business, learning to spot these signs, what we call red flags, isn't just a good idea. It's a non-negotiable skill for your career. And that leads us perfectly into our next section, decoding those red flags. I want you to think of these as your first line of defense. They're the subtle, and sometimes, not so subtle, clues that tell you something in your operation deserves a much closer look. So, what do we actually mean by a red flag? Well, put simply, it's just an indicator that something might be off. It's an early warning. Now, this is absolutely crucial. A red flag is not proof that someone did something wrong. It is simply a signal that says, hey, maybe we should take a calm, objective look over here. Sometimes these flags show up in people's behavior. For instance, you might have an employee who suddenly gets really defensive or just won't cooperate with standard oversight. Or what about that person who never takes a vacation? You might think they're a hard worker, but they could be trying to make sure nobody else looks at their books. And, of course, the classic sign, sudden, big lifestyle changes that just don't seem to line up with their paycheck. Okay, so that's behavior. But what about what's happening on the ground, in the day-to-day operations? This is where you'll find flags in your transaction logs. Are you seeing one person constantly overriding the system? Is a particular server processing way more voids or refunds than everyone else? Anytime you see someone consistently straying from established procedures, that's an operational flag you need to notice. And then, of course, we have the financial red flags. These are often the most concrete signs you'll get. We're talking about strange numbers and reports that nobody can seem to explain, important documents that just go missing, or figures that don't match up when you compare two related reports. Like when your inventory says you used 100 steaks, but your sales report only shows 50 were sold. That's a big one. For years and years, spotting these flags was really all about a manager's experience, their gut instinct. And that's still important. But today, we have a tool that is so much more powerful. So now we're going to shift from simple observation to the systematic power of data analytics. Now, let me be perfectly clear. We are never going to replace great professional judgment. A manager can see the nuance, the context behind why someone does something. But data can do something a human just can't. It can scan through millions of transactions and spot tiny little patterns and anomalies that no person would ever catch. They're not enemies, they're partners. Data gives a manager's judgment superpowers. So, what does this actually look like in practice? It's a pretty straightforward process, really. First, you pull in all the data from your main systems. Sales data from the point of sale, inventory numbers, payroll hours, all of it. Then you use analytical tools to comb through all that data, looking for those weird patterns and anomalies. And finally, the system automatically flags anything that looks like a major outlier, so a manager can take a closer look. And this chart, wow, this just says it all, doesn't it? Have a look. In one quarter, employee A has 5 voids, employee B has 8, both pretty normal. But employee C, 42. That number just jumps right off the page. Without knowing anything else, the data makes this impossible to miss. Again, it doesn't prove anything's wrong, but it absolutely means a manager needs to ask, hey, what's going on here? Okay, so spotting a red flag, whether it's with your own eyes or through data, that's just step one. What you do next is what really defines you as a leader. This next part is all about the art of professional judgment. So let me ask you directly. You've seen that chart, you've spotted the outlier. What's your immediate next step? How you answer that question is absolutely critical, not just for the business, but for your team's morale too. And here is the guiding principle, one we teach right here at Europe Hotel School London. Let me repeat it because it is that important. Red flags do not prove fraud, but indicate areas requiring further attention. Your job is not to be an accuser. Your job is to be an investigator. You don't jump to conclusions, you start asking good questions. This means your response has to be this really delicate balance. It's like walking a tightrope. On one side, you need a healthy dose of skepticism to protect the organization's assets. But on the other, you have to have a deep commitment to fairness to protect your people and maintain a healthy, trusting culture. Let's break down this balancing act. If you just ignore the red flags, you risk letting a small issue spiral into a massive crisis. But if you overreact, if you start pointing fingers without facts, you can destroy trust and morale in an instant. So, what's the goal? The goal is always the same. Gather more information, do it objectively, do it discreetly, and then you can start to form some conclusions. This brings us to our final section. We've talked about the risks, the red flags, the power of data, and the importance of good judgment. Now let's pull all of these pieces together into a professional framework you can use to protect your organization. A truly effective evidence-based approach really comes down to 4 core principles. First, you need to be fluent in recognizing all the different kinds of red flags: behavioral, operational, and financial. Second, use data to back up your professional judgment, not replace it. Third, and this is the big one, you have to approach every single investigation with total objectivity and fairness. And when you do all that, you achieve the final principle. You protect both the organization and its most valuable asset, its employees. And I'll leave you with this final thought. All these systems and processes, they're vital, but they're reactive. They help you find problems after they've started. The best protection is proactive. So as you continue on your path to becoming a leader in our amazing industry, I want you to ask yourself this question. How will I build a culture of transparency, accountability, and real integrity? A culture where red flags are just less likely to pop up in the first place? Because that right there is the true measure of leadership.